please come take your seats? I still hear some noise back in the narthex there. The 2019 LCC Annual Congregational Meeting is now called to order. The tellers have taken account of the voting members. All right, thank you. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for participating in this important part of our congregational life. I'm Margaret Dutcher, Acting Congregation President. Kristen Lehman resigned as Congregation President effective yesterday, so I'm presiding as President this morning. Jean Taylor is available as our parliamentarian resource. Thank you, Jean. Congregation Secretary Barbara Fredericks will record the minutes. Pastor Dunaway, would you begin our meeting with a prayer, please?
The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
God, we give thanks that you promised to be with us at all times, and that you had poured your Spirit into our hearts and lives at our baptisms. And so, right now, Lord, we pray that you would stir up your Holy Spirit within us, that your Spirit might guide our thinking and our doing. Bless this congregational meeting, Lord. Bless the reports that we will be receiving and the decisions that will be made, that all might be pleasing unto you and for your kingdom's sake. For we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
As you can see, our agenda is posted for you to follow. And the annual report is being passed out. If you need one, please raise your hand. Our Constitution requires 50 voting members for a quorum, and George has said that we do have that. So with the voting members present, we have a quorum. Oh, I'm sorry, George, we need the exact count.
Sorry?
We need the exact count. 54. Voting members present, we have a quorum. If anyone is in need of an annual report, please raise your hand so that the teller can distribute one to you. And I believe that has been done. Thank you. Next is a consent agenda for the meeting of the minutes of the last annual meeting, as well as the special congregational meetings held throughout the year, and our agenda for today. All are printed in your annual report. I was just going to say, may I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda? And Elaine Mussett has so done. And Paul Erickson has seconded. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the items on the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the items on the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The items on the consent agenda are approved. Please help me in thanking the Congregation Council members, outgoing President Kristen Lehman, who has done a yeoman's job. Thank you, Kristen. Secretary Barbara Fredericks, Financial Secretary Milt Reed, Treasurer is Cindy Johnson, at-large members Dave Higman, Mike Moore, Joanne Milson, and Jean Kohler. Each council member leads one of our ministry teams, and their reports are in your annual report. Are there any questions from the congregation for the ministry teams? Thank you. The day school is an important ministry of Lutheran Church of the Cross. Are there any questions from the congregation of the day school report? We would like to thank Holly for all your years of service with our school. We will be celebrating that 50th anniversary of the very successful day school ministry. The chair now recognizes Dave Beck and Milt Reed for the Financial Secretary's report.
Just like another slide before now. And there you go. I just wanted to spend a few minutes going over our stewardship situation, given the fact that time, talents, and treasures that the congregants give are pretty much the lifeblood of the church. It's what keeps going. During the year, the ministry team, we try to keep the congregation informed of our financial status. We try to encourage and recognize volunteer participation. And of course, at the end of each year, we conduct our annual stewardship drive. This year, we added a little wrinkle. Two of our members, Rich Lander and Bob Fredericks, were very passionate about our need for an evangelism outreach effort. And we started an evangelism task force, which is moving forward and is already begun to generate some very positive results. Just by way of review, let's see how did we do in 2018? Well, in terms of our contributions, I guess for weekly giving, which is really what primarily funds our operating budget, we fell quite a bit short of our goal by $41,500. Looking into that a little bit, it's really divided into really two categories: pledged and unpledged plus loose plate. The pledged are obviously, those are the contributions given by those individuals who pledged in the prior year's stewardship campaign, and those results were actually pretty good. Getting 97% fulfillment is, I think, generally considered pretty high. Where we fell pretty far short was in the unpledged and loose plate. I think the unpledged would generally be considered what sort of the occasional givers, or those individuals who are not willing yet to quite ready to commit, give, and the loose plate would be from visitors. Those fell far short of what our budget expectations were, and were the primary constituents of our $41,000 deficit. However, when you look at the pledges, even though the overall result was pretty good, we were a little concerned with the number of underpaid. 41 out of 100 fell short of their commitment. Now, some of those are due to people who have moved away, or who have passed away, or no longer with us, but a significant number also from people who have become disengaged with the congregation, which is obviously of some long-term concern to us. But beyond the weekly giving, there are also some other elements to stewardship which are certainly worth mentioning. As usual, we have had a significant amount of dedicated money gifts for things other than the operating budget, and this year it came in at about $42,000. And that includes things, both outreach as well as some congregation or church-centered projects. And specifically last year we had two major capital programs, the storm shutters for the chapel and the relocation of the nursery. And for that we got in total about $15,000 in special gifts. Also, we had quite a bit of in-kind giving for really our outreach projects, and this would include things such as the angel tree, giving for the Easter baskets, the backpacks, etc. In total, I would estimate that to be about $10,000. And maybe the most important element of our stewardship is, money is needed, but the volunteer hours are absolutely essential. And there, I've very conservatively just stated we get several thousand hours of volunteer participation. I think that's understating it. It's probably, as more I think about it, it's over 10,000 hours of volunteer participation of the time and talents, and that is, for the church, pretty much priceless. We couldn't fulfill our mission without it, so we certainly thank everyone for their participation. Now let's look ahead. How did we do in the stewardship campaign for 2019? What you've got here is a mix of some good and some not so good. The good is we have 11 new pledges for the year, and the total dollars are not bad. It's pretty close to what we got last year. What's exceptional is the average per pledge. It went up substantially from last year. It is already quite high based on our discussions with some synod representatives. And if you look at our new pledgers, $3,700 average per pledge is really quite exceptional. They say the total dollars aren't bad, all things considered. I guess with a little caveat there, the last couple of years we've been trending up a little bit, and this year we notched down about $2,300 versus last year, which isn't, as I say, given what the church has been through, is not a bad result. But what is not a good result, and which is really somewhat of concern, are the total number of pledgers. This year we only had 80 pledges, and that's off 20 from last year, and that marks a pretty steady downward trend. I think in 2015, get the number right, 2015 we had 129 pledge units, and that's dropped steadily down to where we are. Now, right now we're at the same level we were in 2013. So whereas, where the commitment level of those who are pledging is really quite strong and very gratifying, we certainly need to get more people to see LCC as their long-term church, and they're worthy of their long-term financial commitment. So, are there any questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, Cindy Johnson will present the 2019 ministry spending proposal. As this comes as a recommendation from the Congregational Council for approval, the motion requires no second. The chair recognizes Cindy Johnson, treasurer.
Thank you, Bargy. If you're challenged to read the individual numbers, please go ahead and turn to page 47 in our booklet. Dave, thank you for really pointing out the fact that when we are doing here is ministry, and that the ministry empowers the people. Those thousands of hours, I think, just happen right here in the church, and are probably a good number of them by Dave himself, just so you, he's the Energizer Bunny. And there's probably an equal number of hours as we go out into the community and share God's mission. Our ministry proposal, if you take a look and compare it to last year, we're recognizing that even though we had a similar pledged number, when we took a look at year-end actuals, we chose to use the year-end actuals for our go forward for the ministry spending. So if in envelopes, plate, and there's also a Sunday school line there that we haven't used in a while, we plan to receive $420,000. Those other income pieces, you may see a big change. Last year we used $20,000 of our dedicated funds, specifically $10,000 for youth and $10,000 from our general reserves to fund the budget. This year we are planning to use $0 from those dedicated funds. You'll also see a change in the school giving here for the maintenance and occupying contribution. And that's recognition of, during this refurbishment program, that many of the expenses that the school reimbursed us through those two line items are going to be paid direct. So as you see a decrease here, you're going to see a corresponding decrease in the specific expense line items that they will be taking over. Therefore, our total spending plan to support our ministry is based upon a income of $487,365. On the expense side, under congregational community care, you'll see one notable increase, synod support. And now that's really a misnomer, and next year you're going to see a different name attached to that. That's really our support of worldwide missions of the ELCA. So it's not just going across the street to Tampa there, but it's going across the world, funding wells, funding schools, funding mosquito nets, women-led cottage industries, etc., as we make our presence to go and serve in the world. We increased that to $10,500, which represents roughly 2.5% of our pledged number. If you take a look on the operational support, with no senior pastor this year, we have an interim. If you'll take a look at that pastoral care subtotal, you'll see that this year we're planning on spending about $87,800. You'll see our youth leader hasn't changed much except by the 3% increase in salary that we are proposing for all of our staff. And that'll carry through not only in professional staff, but in music staff when you see that a little bit later as well. Under communications, communications has got possibly the biggest jump you see in here. And as Dave was talking to you a little bit about evangelism task force that we had, they are proposing some exciting things that we're putting under a categorization of advertising to get the word out about who LCC is and what our mission in this town and in this world is. Going over, if you look at the building maintenance total, as I mentioned, you would see that 30,000 difference from the day school in the decrease in our building maintenance total, and you can see what those numbers are there as well. Stewardship, as Dave said, we have two things. We send out the envelopes in terms of what we spend, as well as processing any costs associated with electronic giving or people paying us through credit cards. Under spiritual formation, we have youth ed and adult ed. Youth ed, the biggest number increase you see there is relative to the nursery, and that's a desire to have 2 staff members both on Wednesday and Sunday morning. And then finally, worship and music. Thank you to Maddie as being our new interim. He is not Rebecca. And you see that the difference in the salaries that we paid someone that did everything versus splitting it among perhaps several people is a significant difference in here as well. There is one new line item under worship and music called audio-visual support. That line item is to work on that specific item, audio-visual, training, upgrades, updates, etc. Youth and family has decreased. That's primarily a self-funded ministry in terms of their activities, going to camps, the different activities that they do during Rock the Universe, etc. And then right under youth and family, you'll see a new $5,000 line item called a contingency for the call process. We know that calling a pastor can be expensive, either traveling to visit them or to bring a new pastor in, so we'd like to start building up a fund to do that, which balances our budget again at the $487,365 number. Are there any questions that I can answer for you? That was, I'm sorry, that is a misnomer. It should now be the bell choir. It was, we reused a account number. It is not the children's choir, but it's the bell choir director. Thank you. That change will also show up next year. I'm sorry? Yes, there's Vacation Bible School, but that's usually a break even or even a profit maker for us based upon the funds collected during that time. I hate to call it a profit maker, that sounds so cold. I guess, Madam President, then we ask for a motion.
So hearing no more discussion, all in favor of approving the 2019 ministry spending proposal, say aye. Opposed? Nay. The ayes have it, and the 2019 annual budget is approved. Our next order of business is the resolution to approve the proposed amendments to the LCC bylaws. As this comes as from Congregational Council with a recommendation for approval, it requires no second. The resolution is printed in the annual report, and the chair recognizes Jean Kohler, leader of our Future Directions team, to present.
The resolution is on page 54 in your booklet. A lot of whereases, but basically it's to approve the bylaws. We also have a summary of what's in the bylaws work on page 55. There are copies, I believe, up front, where of the markup. If anyone would like the full markup version of what exactly we're proposing as the amendments. I'd first like to thank, this is a process that's been ongoing for almost 2 years, and I would like to thank my very close partner throughout all of this, Rick Mussett. You've seen him up here presenting before. I'd also like to thank for the day school portion, our council member and day school liaison, Dave Higman, and Future Directions member, Sarah Siegfried, who's also a member of the Day School Board of Directors, for their help in working on that area. And for the endowment part of the bylaws changes, I would like to thank David Beck and Jim Denhart for all of their work in helping us out. The Constitution was last updated in January of 2017, and we were not, at this time, we didn't see any need to do any changes recommend any changes to the Constitution. The bylaws, however, were last updated in January 2010, and so this review focused a lot on the bylaws. Now, I know sometimes it's a little confusing, but the way it works in the ELCA, the bylaws paragraph numbers are those that correspond with an appropriate number in the Constitution. So if the numbering appears to jump all over, that's the reason. The proposed amendments are in 3 areas. The day school coordination, what we're trying to do there is expand in the bylaws the specifics of how the congregation oversees the governance of the day school, and that is done through the LCC Church Council. So we've added some of the specifics that are further outlined in the day school bylaws and articles of incorporation. We've added some of the specific items that the church council members are responsible for to paragraph 14.03.01. The organizational relationships and responsibilities and structure is basically to get everything in line and do some clarifications, some reorganization a little bit. As I said, we haven't redone the bylaws since 2010, and that's when we first instituted the ministry teams. Before that, we had commissions, and so we went to ministry teams. We've had a little chance to work with the ministry team structure and the officer structure and the smaller church council. And so we wanted to make sure that we had learned from those last 7 years to kind of reorganize to make it a little bit easier on everyone. And those are in paragraphs 4.04.01, as well as paragraphs 11.01 and 13.07.01. We are also adding the some definition of how we will do electronic meetings, both in the council and all the organizations of the church, and that's in 12.13.01. And then finally, for consistency of formatting for all the committees are actually established in the Constitution. The bylaws has more of the details of how they operate, so we wanted some consistency in that, and that's 13.02 through 13.06. And then finally, the fund development, or the fund endowment fund is, our endowment fund was established in 1990 by the congregation, and it still exists. There's a report in your packet of the endowment fund for the year, and the recommendations that were made from an ad hoc task group that we currently have managing that fund have been approved by council. One of the things we needed to do was to clarify exactly how our current endowment fund fits. There's been a lot of conflicting things over the history of the fund since 1990, and of course a lot of things have changed in the way that endowment funds are managed in nonprofits. So Jim Denhart and David Beck have been working diligently to try to bring all of that together. What we're doing is to, first of all, recognize that our current endowment fund is actually a mission endowment fund in the new ELC, in the current ELCA terminology. We had that paragraph in our Constitution that we had one, but we didn't say what it was. And so we wanted to be specific that our current endowment fund that was established in 1990 is consistent with the purpose of a mission endowment fund, which is to do outreach beyond the work of the normal church budget. So that terminology is clarified in bylaws 5.05.01. Then we put the specific responsibilities for management of all permanently restricted endowment funds, recognizing that we might in the future, perhaps a generous donor, establish other endowment funds for the benefit of Lutheran Church of the Cross. And so we wanted to expand the endowment committee to have the overall authority to manage all of our endowment funds and make recommendations to council for use of distributions. Along with that, the even more specific operating administration guidelines have been put into a draft policy document that will be given to our newly elected endowment committee for them to finish and give to council for approval. Are there any questions on the bylaws? Bless you. Okay. No questions?
Thank you, Jean. Oh, that's right. Sorry. It's okay. Amendments to the bylaws require a 2/3 majority of the voting members. So will the tellers please take position to count the votes? Yes. This is a raise of hand, right? So, would you, all those in favor of accepting the bylaws, please? Yes? We had the motion. Okay, thank you. Please raise your hand if you are in favor of accepting the bylaws. Okay, you may lower your hands. Those opposed? Tellers, what are the results of your count? Okay. 44 in favor and 0 opposed. So the resolution has been approved. Thank you, tellers. The next order of business is election of 4 voting members to the Endowment Committee. Note that to begin the committee under the newly approved bylaws, we will elect 1 member for a 1-year term, 2 for 2-year terms, and 1 for a 3-year term. As terms expire, members will be elected for 3-year terms in accordance with the LCC bylaws. The Congregation Council will appoint the 5th member at their first meeting. Will the nominees recommended by the Congregation Council please stand as their names are called? For a 1-year term, Dave Higman. For 2-year terms, Rich Scanlon and Carrie Milan. And a 3-year term is Joe Mazzara. All members have agreed to serve. Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the Endowment Committee? Hearing none, the nominations for the Endowment Committee are closed. Will the tellers distribute the ballots? Okay, or you may collect the ballots. Yes, Bill? Oh, you need a ballot, okay. Is there anyone who needs a ballot? I need a ballot. Okay, please collect the ballots. Tellers. Rudy, I need to return. Okay, thank you. Okay, as the Endowment Committee ballots are being counted, the chair recognizes Steve Welsh to present the nominating committee report. Steve is not here.
The nominating committee reports in the booklet.
Yes. Page 37 is the nominating committee annual report for 2018. As you're reading through that, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. start here.
Nominations for two-year terms, Cindy Johnson, congregation.
Okay. All right, nominations for council terms starting in January 2019. One-year term, there are no nominations. For two-year term, there is Cindy Johnson, treasurer, George Richardson. For the three-year term is Sherry Daly, Paul Erickson, and Marvin Gaye. Are there any other nominations for these terms and these positions? Hearing none, nominations for treasurer and at-large congregational members are now closed. So again, you should have your white ballot if you'd like to fill that out. I think the tellers are, would you like some music? Milt and Mike will collect the ballots and hand them to the tellers. I'm going to go off script here for just a minute and just say thank you so much to our council members who have served this past year and the administrative staff of the church and the volunteers that have put in countless hours. So thank you all for having this church be God's church. Thank you, tellers. For our endowment committee election ballot, there were 56 votes that all 4 candidates received. 2 were given to Bella Bappas, and for a total of 58 total votes for the endowment committee election. So David Higman is for a 1-year term, Carrie Minelli for this 2-year term, Joe Mazzaro for a 3-year term, and Rich Scanlon for a 2-year term. So thank you all for agreeing to serve. While we're waiting, it has suggested that we sing a hymn, and so I'd like to sing our opening hymn, All Are Welcome. I find it very appropriate for today. It's number 641, and we did verses 1, 3, and 5. Oops. Okay. Yes, it's the one that's no, it's not the one that's in the program. It's hymn number 641 in your hymnal, verses 1, 3, and 5. Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live, a place where saints and children tell our hearts learn to forgive, built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall bear visions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where love is found in water, wine, and wheat, a banquet hall on holy ground where peace and justice meet. Here the love of God through Jesus is revealed in time and space, as we share in Christ the feast that frees us. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where all are named, their songs and visions heard, and love and treasure taught and claimed as words within the word, built of fears and cries and laughter, prayers of faith and songs of grace. Let us proclaim from floor to rafter, all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Some ballad music. So, Miss Kristen, do you have any words as your outgoing parting words? This is a woman that has just deserves a round. Thank you. Her family also deserves that. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
By the way, the new council will be meeting in the conference room immediately following this meeting. so you can't believe yet.
Are you serving them lunch?
Are we serving lunch?
Marty, I just want to say that confirmation today is meeting, I believe, in Fellowship Hall, and they're talking about religions of the world. And today they have a gentleman who practices Hinduism speaking to them about his religion. And I'm sure if there are any of you adults that might be interested in hearing what they have to say, you would be welcome too. I think they start about 11:30ish. So just throw it out there.
Yes, Julie. I have a question about the future direction of the church and the call committee. Our numbers have been pretty dire the last 4 years, gone down considerably. We went from a high of 129 pledges when Will arrived. We're at 80. Our deficit has only been met because both our head pastor and our music director left. So going forward, we have money in the budget for Pastor Benaway. Is that going to be the salary level that we aim for a new pastor? Have we got a timeline for when we would be starting to call committee? I just feel like it's going to be hard to attract candidates when we have pretty statistically poor representation of LCC. So I don't know if anyone else is concerned about that, but what's the next step in the call committee and what's happening with it? And also in the music, we have a great interim, but we don't really have money in the budget to get another music director yet.
Cindy, may I call on you, being the budget expertise?
I can tell you what I know, which may not be too much more than you do, Julie. I think the first thing we have with council is having a retreat and working on something that's called the sustainability survey, as well as some other preliminary steps before we get to the call committee stage. I think that's part of step one, and I think we're tackling that sometime in February. A rough timeline says once we do that, we'll start having meetings with the congregation to find out some of the things that they like and don't like and concerns as you've just expressed. And then the next step, I guess, will be to start forming that call committee. I think an early timeline that Kristen proposed for us is maybe as early as this summer. Not sure. And then their work begins in creating that congregational profile. And that, having been on a call committee before, I know that takes 2 or 3 months and a lot of meetings with the congregation and so on. And then it goes into council, or excuse me, into the synod office in Tampa, and they'll try to do some of the matchmaking to see if there are pastors out there who are a match for what we say in our profile. And then maybe, Pastor Benaway, you can speak more to that process.
That was very close to the subject. Part of the role of the interim, I'm here representing the office of the bishop, and part of the role of the interim is to work with the leadership of the congregation, the membership of the congregation, to determine those things that we might need to address prior to even establishing a call committee. You raised many of those kinds of issues. As a congregation, we need to address those particular kinds of issues and many others that will be identified along the way. What we want to do is to identify who we are as a congregation, know who we are and what kind of congregation we want. We can, during the interim, make those kinds of changes that the church wants to make. Not for the sake of the pastor, I won't be here beyond the interim, of course, but the congregation can make those changes that would help them be the congregation they want to be. And then we work with the bishop's office, the bishop himself, and also the congregation council and the interim pastor to determine when the right time is to set up the call committee to move forward. Have we accomplished the work of the interim? There's specific work to be done during the interim. And if we have accomplished that, then we feel like we're healthy, we know who we are, what we are, and where we're heading, and we've answered questions point in time, then, of course, we're in a position to all agree that, yeah, let's establish that call committee, begin the process. Part of it is we end up identifying more who we are, so that when we call pastor, the pastor also sees who we are and what our relationships are and what we want to be. So that's part of the interim time. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, it looks like our tellers are. George, could you go out and ask them how they're coming along? Yes, so.
Follow up on that same question. It didn't answer the question about budgeting.
Call committees or pastors, one thing. How about the advertising for a permanent music director? Did that ever happen? Are we doing it? It's not because we aren't thrilled with Maddie's back, but we're looking again, and it affects not only the budget, but what are we doing about that? Is there a search committee? There was an original committee that was put into place, looking for the interim position.
Still then to establish and go forward what are our needs. With that being said, the role of a person to lead music and worship is very difficult to get somebody that has multiple skill sets. Maddie is doing an awesome job, and yes, very good. And he's starting to learn the organ too. So we do have some things in place with some people that are willing to share their knowledge and expertise. So it's kind of an ongoing question right now. So if you can just be patient with everything, and I know you have all been so patient with me stepping in this summer. So it's a relief to know that Maddie's here right now. And going forward, we will work diligently in finding permanency. So thank you. But thanks for asking the question. They're almost done. Ah, I see Rudy coming forward.
All right, can you hear me? Results are for Cindy Johnson. There were 62 yay votes for Cindy and 1 no vote for council members at large for 3 years. There were 61 positive votes or aye votes. There were 4 write-in votes, 2 for Sue Tidwell, 1 for David Beck, and 1 for Bob Fredericks. So the council members at large are the ones listed on the ballot. For the council member at large for a 2-year term with George Richardson, there were 58 yay votes and 3 no votes.
Thank you, tellers, and thank you, congregation. So the results for the congregation treasurer and at-large council members are as follows. I declare Cindy Johnson elected as congregation treasurer, and the following as at-large congregation council members. For the 2-year term, George Richardson. For a 3-year term, Sherry Daly, Paul Erickson, and Marvin Gaye. So thank you. Finally, please join me in thanking our retiring council members, in addition to Kristen, Dave Higman, Joanne Nilsson, and Jean Kohler. Thank you. If there is any further business to consider at this meeting, please bring it up to discuss now. Great. Hearing none, The meeting is adjourned, and the next annual congregation meeting will be January 26th of 2020. Pastor, would you please lead us in a concluding prayer?
Well, thank you. I hope you all had a chance to read my annual report. The first day I was here, I asked you to. So I think that's unusual. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Dear God, it's good to be your people in this place. It's challenging. It's so much opportunity ahead of us. We do pray, Lord, that you would guide us in our thinking during this time of interim, that you would lead us to be and do those things that we need to do and be as your people in this place. Lord, we give thanks for the many privileges that you give us in this community and the many opportunities that you present us with our school and with our ministries of outreach. We pray that you would bless us and strengthen us, Lord. Help us also to be that welcoming church that we sing about, that all might feel welcomed in this place. For we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Go in peace and serve the Lord.
Thank you. And the new council, please meet in the conference room.
Yeah, that's it. We're ready to go.